Surely here with Sirius Talis Moon, and as I'm about to talk about Rahu and Ketu on the Sagittarius Pisces axis, Sol hour, Moon night, Ascendant 2 degrees Cancer, Moon 17 degrees Scorpio, and the midheaven is conjoining Rahu. Now, let's caretake for a video, and it's a really cool video um, that really discusses how basically when we talk about wealth consolidation and the use of, unfortunately, child trafficking rings, um, the farthest away, and you can take that from the elite, but also to one's personal well-being, and the farther away one's sexuality and orgasm is from embodied tantric connection that is sovereign and willingly consensual. Okay, if it's with self-pleasure and self-pleasure, with partner, willingly consensual, body, heart, mind, and soul, and energy. The farthest away from that, the more financial problems you're going to have. Now, this is going to be very weird because it's going to look like you have money. Sometimes it's going to look like you have money. But when you need to cash in on that money, one of two things happen. One, off with your head. Two, off with your money. And and this is I think beta per se wisdom. And the closest you are to sexual sovereignty, that is again body, heart, mind, and soul. Okay, so if people think sex, and their mind goes to lust, urge, physical, whatever, or even astral energy harvesting, whatever, none of that. Okay, body, heart, mind, and soul, tantric embodiment, um, and that was this very cool episode that one can absolutely take for their personal life. In fact, the more people practice sexual sovereignty and tantric embodied connection with themselves, um, the more people are allowing themselves to be both aligned, healthy, and wealthy. Okay, and in a way that is aligned with loving and being loved. So, and again, love can be yes, many things. Um, Not everybody has the same type of relationship, or yes, and that is important. Um, and yes, the eroticism that is heart aligned. It doesn't necessarily have to happen with a partner, and there are even people who are eco-erotic, which is there are weird stuff going on. Okay, like less terrible, like another thing. Yes, I'm not talking animals, God forbid. And the reason I say God forbid is the same. Okay, for children, it's just misaligned for everyone to be very, very tender. Um, Now I want to talk about people that have Rahu and Ketu on the Jupiter-Mercury axis. So that can be Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, Gemini. And um, those people are actually very interesting because those are the people that do explore wealth and well-being. Um, when it comes to Virgo, it's very obvious. Virgo is your drug dealer. And you say, oh, Pisces is a drug dealer. No, Virgo is your certified drug dealer. It's your chemist. It's your. It's also your naturopath, your healer, and then it goes to Pisces, which is the spiritual part, um, the holistic effect. For example, in aromatherapy, essential oil is considered from all parts of the plant. Yes, so there are many essential oils that are essential oil, but they're not from all parts of the plant. They're still therapeutic. Um, and so when it comes to um, yes, when it comes to having Rahu and Ketu on this axis, it usually comes to the people that usually in one trajectory of their life they have experienced um, not being on the material realm. Whether it is Sagittarius, which is the fire of philosophy and the philosopher stone and so on, or Pisces, which is um, kind of similar but watery and flowy. Pisces can absolutely be the homeless on the street that knows more about the world than the rest of the stuff, and not necessarily because they're homeless. What the other polarity is those who write and read books. Um, the combination of the two give us people that look at and study money, currency, economy, trade, and spirituality, philosophy, and so on and so forth. So these are the people that usually scare other people. If Taurus Scorpio is wealth in the sense of psychological deep transformation and attunement with nature, Capricorn Cancer is it's way more than climbing up the ladder. It's climbing the mountain and the rigidness it takes to sustain life. While Cancer is the nourishment and holding the space it takes and the rest. The rest is also Saturn, but holding the emotional space it takes to support such sustained effort. Leo and Aquarius is absolutely the monarchy versus the Templars, and we absolutely see that every time Pluto strikes one or the other, we absolutely see that because the Templars were the bankers. In fact, the French Revolution was about are you decentralized, which people call it democracy, uh, uh, or are you with the royalty? And it's a very fascinating balance of power because Aquarius is the JP Morgan Chase. He was born with Pluto in Aquarius. Um, some people have children with Pluto in Aquarius. Yes, be careful of Peter rings, be careful of trafficking rings. I see a lot of folks, whether some colleagues, children already doing the hand gestures. Um, be very cautious with that because the child trafficking rings are real, okay, and those children have Pluto in Aquarius. So this is like it's given Templar energy, but those are children that really need to be cautious um, about the topic of child trafficking. Um, but the Pisces Virgos incorporate the spiritual aspect with the meticulously detailed, or the one thing that changes everything type of detail that is completely, how should I say that? You think about the archetypes. The archetype of the land that is constantly moving. I'm half Dutch, and in Netherlands, the land is always moving. So when it comes to even parking lots, they have built a machinery that basically digs up the soil consistently, so it's almost like a living structure. They're also very good in biological structures, um, because they have to deal with the constantly moving land. You build a house, and the house begins to become like a boat. And a lot of people even live on boat and floating houses. Um, Indeed, in 2007, in 2009, I had a patent to do with that, but takes on several other considerations. And I actually considered to try it um, on the wealthy people before, and it's actually done. They are the first lab rats. Um, and so the Pisces archetype is being at sea. And being at sea, one has to have tremendous amount of ability to surrender in the might of nature, with tremendous amount of ability to maneuver. Um, and so those two archetypes brought together, um, of a mutable, adaptable, constantly moving, um, having to be in total surrender of energy sometimes, is something that is very frightening for people who are, how should I say that? For people that don't have the abilities to navigate the seas. Neptune, the outer planet that's associated with Pisces, is slower than even Pluto. And that creates a lot of illusions and disillusionment, but also miraculous healing. Um, and indeed, when I was in Netherlands, I channeled a lot. And even when I was young, and my mama had traveled with me in Europe, we lived in the car, and when we entered, I used to do the navigation, and when we entered Netherlands, I became like my father, my Dutch father. Okay. And then my mama did the same thing she did with my father. She said, "Stop. Right now, I drive by intuition." And then my mother had intuition with the small street, with a little bit here, a little bit there, and it was like navigating the sea. Um, when I traveled to Netherlands, I was channeling. I was literally navigating while channeling. And I was also in between houses, and there was, yes, tremendous amount of having to surrender things. Um, challenging experience. But also, there are things that I remember very favorably. Um, However, it is beyond. Uh, it is one absolutely understands the archetype of sailing the seas. And if I think about, well, if sailing is like what I experienced in Netherlands, then it's kind of whoa. Now you think about those in physical terms. The people with the ability to navigate the seas, they scare a lot of people. Now the funny thing about it, a Pisces, a normal Pisces, can absolutely be found 3 a.m. And I remember I had there was a roommate to my uh, back then Bessie, and we were there at 3 a.m. Doing yoga, sleeping on weird mattresses, and howling not to the moon but to the ceiling. And that for a Pisces, that's very normal. And so, um, but if somebody would take one, this yogurt, it's not like the yogurt, it's the yogurt you buy in a penny yogurt. If somebody would take one, then in my best it was an Aquarian, so the wealth redistribution of of other people's wealth. That was not only, but that was basically the conjoining of the two was really really fascinating. Um, and so you understand that the person is busy howling to the ceiling at 3 a.m. doesn't consider themselves necessarily being incredibly scary to, to other people. But this is where the Pisces quality paramount, and also the Sagittarius. But Pisces is a real drama. Those are the people that can sustain the times where everything falls apart and the Pisces is dissociated and adrift, wondering about the meaning of things. So that's the Sagittarius. Now there were plenty of Pisces that literally lost their entire everything, but this is how it flips because a Pisces, it doesn't bounce back. It's helpless, 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 sitting on top of the world. Both scenarios howling to the ceiling at 3 a.m. That's something that scares people. Um, Now, the ability to look into the invisible and not just dismiss that as pseudoscience and to connect the things that don't seem to connect. Okay, Pisces is two fish swimming to opposite direction held by a pole. Um, People that have Pisces seventh house or Pisces first house or Pisces fifth house, sometimes they would have relations that you wonder, how do these two, what do these, um, what's going on there? And that is just a part of its Piscean nature. Um, so when it comes to, let's say, the 2030 axis, it's going to have Rao on Gen Z land. How do we make this even more provocative? Okay, so this is probably soul hour or something when I say that. Um, Yeah. Okay. Now here's the thing. Those type of um, Raos and Ketus are going to be the type of people that will incorporate their philosophical and spiritual knowledge and their ability to navigate the seas, or to send out the message like expanding fire. Um, Actually, the woman I worked in her international business for sex positive, um, basically tips on how to attune and to our own tantric embodiment. When she was trying to market her courses, then her marketing teacher told her to hone in on something, and that something was her being an evangelist. And she said, "Okay, I'm going to use my evangelistic." Now, I had a discomfort with evangelism, um, and naturally, sometimes the things that trigger us, we need to look within, because I have a Sagittarius 10th house with Uranus in it. and so, and so when I talk about astrology, something comes out of me. When I talk about sexual sovereignty, um, no stone unturned. This is the antidote to Inquisition. Um, so, very difficult to get me passionate about something. but when I do get passionate, it is yeah, people, going back to my Spirit of Matter channel. Um, I think I think several astral folks collected some regrets for a lifetime, maybe. um, but with the Pisces, it's no less scary. They don't necessarily make as much noise as the Sagittarians. They might be, you know, meditating in Ekveld for 17 hours, but um, it's just the people that you wouldn't necessarily think. You think there are heads in the clouds, but those who have their heads in the clouds see that the clouds are very socially engineered. And the Pisces would take the time to see that. And the Sagittarius would take the time to spread the message. um, so that spiritual wealth, it seems like it's not going to understand money ever. It's not going to be financially responsible. But then what happens? Now, for some of these folks, they grew into fiscal realities. Take, for example, Mark Bayersky. He was an auctionist, a businessman, art trader, an oligarch. Okay, the English version of an oligarch. Worked with celebrities, whatnot. And then had a spiritual awakening. Now he's selling crystals in prices that skyrocket because he has his unique energy into the crystal. Program the crystal. Program Mercury ward, the crystal for holistic healing. For those who think that crystals are drugs, no. No, no, that's not those crystals. Um, but this is the thing when the trajectory is the opposite, whether it's Ketu Pisces, Ketu Sagittarius. Those people think about money. They think about the ideology around resources. They think about they think about the value of art to sustain the meaning of life. And then they don't usually do all the things that other people do. And then they have no money. And then they're being in a situation where they have to be financially responsible. What does a normal person do? I'll pay myself first, I'll donate some, I'll save money, I'll invest it in bonds, James Bond, 2008, everybody was psychiatric. It wasn't the subprime. It was the olanzapine crisis. Because these folks, they got SSRIs, boom, everybody manic. And then you spend money, you spend money, you spend money. They got cuckoo, they got social social disability. And it wasn't even by them trying to fool the system. It's like you go to the doctor, they write SSRIs, you're depressed. I mean, what happened in a financial crisis? People get depressed. Then it brings in what people call manic episode. They will say only people that are manic depressive can go to a manic episode. Half of the nation that took the credit score down from all of your bonds that you're invested in your 401ks, that not all of them, okay, that's drug induced something. And then what? They can't pay their debt. They need rehabilitation, so they go to study another profession. They go to study a degree. Um, and after a while, they're eligible to erasing debt, so that they can have a chance at basically making an income. What would a Pisces Sagittarius do? Now, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't go through that trajectory, but they would look at money and they would say something. Currency can collapse. We need a resources-based economy. But if the people are rapey, then I will murder them. And then I'm in jail. I mean, maybe some people wrote books from jail, but Martin Luther King made a revolution from jail. But maybe I don't manage to murder them too well. If I'm alive, I get in hospital. It gives some benefits, but but in any case, the trauma is something that's going to prevent me from feeling comfortable with that resource economy. So we try to see, can a workplace adjust the salary to the housing? For example, my grandmom worked at actually Elite Chocolate Factory, and she worked for 30 years, took a mortgage, and paid the mortgage with her salary. And that's how my grandparents had an apartment. Then, of course, they had 2 children. Um, so I was thinking, hey, maybe there would be a business that would do something um, of a similar condition or support the uh, expenses on the housing. Like the money needs to adjust, the money needs to money. But also, what if there is suddenly inability to work? Pisces and Sagittarius tend to that. And then they have to take financial responsibility. So what will they do? They'll philosophize about this, they think about this, and then they try to get educated. Okay, that is both the Mercury and the Jupiter. When I heard that people maintain intergenerational wealth in trust funds, shout out to Abundancia. I was like, what? How do they trust? That's how I learned about Peter Rings. Now, a normal person would say, oh my gosh, this is a terrible thing. We need to raise awareness and so on and so forth. But Pisces and Sagittarius would say, okay. And this is the birth of the concept of sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter. Because we're the folks that get that. Now, when people don't understand that something is a fundamental basis for not only their will to live, but their ability to have means for life, that is a person that would make it a crusade to have their rights. And with Neptune in Aries, that is about, first of all, ideation and evaluation around physical goods. For example, honey preserves itself for a millennia, maybe even more. But if you buy a ton of honey and then you need to move to another place, more than one jar of honey probably you won't be able to take with you. Now, this is the thing. Pisces knows that even if there is one person who walks with a jar of honey, that means that means the jar of honey is not at home, then the entire world will collapse. That understanding really scares those whose job is to make sure that everybody has to go with their last jar of honey. And not only that, in their last jar of honey, they must maintain sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter. They can self-pleasure. In fact, one doesn't get out of homelessness without doing it. And the Pisces understands that even if one person had their creative energy stolen from them, the entire world will collapse. That means all of these folks that are busy with maneuvering inflation, closing banks. Think about it, and a big shout out to the financial historian. When people had the depression, so people had to go to eat soup by Al Capone, and mind you, they weren't very fond of the mafia. um, I actually worked for an insurance company. We had a boss that made us soup, home cooked soup. So he was prepared to be Al Capone. um, and at the same time, um, a pack of eggs could buy you a haircut. And if unless you had like a pack of gold, which would make you very susceptible to being murdered. So you had to be a little wealthy, but not too wealthy. And there was no place to keep the goods, to hide the goods. It's a wealth redistribution. And people had to exchange food, but then some people began to hoard food, which makes sense, to only barter with some people. And the big solution to the national debt crisis, so that the Templars, even though they ruled the government, wouldn't come to cash in on their debt. And when they did that to monarchies, they burned kings like they were witches at the stake. Takes the financial historian. Um, but um, this would be the ruin of the Templars, because they would be those crucifix people living on donations, and everybody looked, how are these poor people hoarding all the goods? Huh. And then the rivalry between monarchies and Templars, um, decentralized regimes, and forced the abolition of slavery in certain regions. Now, the people that violate the sexual sovereignty, they have subjected themselves to everything: political assassination, being trafficked themselves. Um, all the things that people don't necessarily want to happen to them. For the people that maintain sexual sovereignty, they are the ones that have the way out. Because they have the energy aligned. And it's just when people expect a person to do certain things for food, then they're like, okay, if a person wants to kill my life, my will to live, then it is okay to kill them. It's also more moral. But when it came to national debt, they made a world war. Because what happened in the financial crisis? This attempt to violate sexual sovereignty. Everybody poor. They would do everything for money, or for food, or so on. Then those that violated those things, generations of them, died in two world wars. One before the financial crisis and one after. After Second World War, the suffragist movement began to take. Before that, suffragists were put in concentration camps. And women would not be able to get the right to vote without fighting for sexual sovereignty. That's not the story we've been told. We've been told we should take the sex workers because they made equity and so on. No. They made enabling of trafficking children, trafficking people, doing everything so that they would take the violence to somebody else. It's not their fault. But those that fought for sexual sovereignty, they're the ones that managed to get the right to vote. And I saw that when I was working for that sex positive um, international business that was about teaching tips for self pleasure. Okay, I saw cases of women that were threatened to be murdered, and I was targeted individual because I helped one woman, and when I was in therapy, she noticed something was off, but I basically took the thing that is taught, and when speaking with a person that is in life threat, they would stretch that. She discovered things to do with the connection between grief and sexual violence. And yes, in academia, there was another lady that we together discovered the connection between plagiarism and sexual violence, which is basically they do the sexual violence to take a creative energy. But this lady, when she began to work with embodiment, just sexuality, she got help, she got the welfare to stand for her. You can imagine how targeted of. Now, there were attempts to recruit me to the other side. And I was like, Fulken, sexual sovereignty, non-negotiable. Make a life while making a living. Because that other side is basically antithetical to wealth, antithetical to love, antithetical to well-being. And this is how I would run into, perhaps with a telepathic help of a colleague, the point of remediating corruption. I realized the point of Thales, and then I was shown the book Economic Hitman. And the person that wrote that book later began to work in alleviating corruption. So that's the thing about the 2030 axis that really scares everyone, because the people that are not aligned with those trajectories, they may have um, a lot of fears because they don't know how to adjust. We have a new generation of wealth that greatest wealth redistribution, and everybody is like people are growing, discerning. So all the magnum opus teaching of the Masons doesn't work anymore. Not everybody can be first. If they practice a sexual sovereignty, they will be free. And if they don't, they can say that they are free, but if they don't practice sexual sovereignty, they're not free. And the people were, impressed, because it's like, this is a woman that made the welfare work for someone. The welfare kidnaps children to the Epstein rings, to the child trafficking rings, okay? And they were um, so if you ask what the person did, it had to do with embodiment and basically, well, you know what? I invite you to watch sexual sovereignty related videos and tantric embodiment with the emphasis on readiness. Okay, the difference between being yeasty or having weird fluids in the semen has to do with that. And with food, with nutrition, and so on and so forth. Yes, of course. But first and foremost, that. Um, and so that was challenging, a lot of a lot of things. Um, but this was, yes, indeed. And because I stood my ground and I did not go with traffickers in academia, then I also met a judge that was doing debt forgiving after I got the degree. And he told me that, like, next to my lawyer, you have no idea how many cases like this I meet at court every single day, which was about a decade afterwards. And that's the story of sexual sovereignty. Because what would be expected is that if a person would get in debt, they would take a loan, they would try to traffic themselves, they would go here, they would go there. What would be expected is that if they go to academia and people are informants and know stuff about them, whatever, if they go to a meditation and the channelist says, I see bank accounts. I'm like, an accountant. Do you want to meet with Achbun? Achbun was accountant for Louis Vuitton and the many LB. I don't remember. Okay. And he's doing fundraising to. I actually haven't heard from his account. I haven't seen him uploading anything new in a while. Um, but he's running a little bit of an important litigation. Yes, one could argue about the marketing, but it's definitely tackling interesting. Something to do with the Netherlands government, an entire country. And I guess the ICC will be moving to Singapore. ICJ will be moving to Singapore following also that. But it would be expected that a person would be, um, yes, extorted to do all kinds of weird things. Or if a person homeless, would be expected that they would do this or they would do that, or they would traffic people. And if they don't, as actually did not get a housing, and then for the housing that they did rent, was by another trafficker that he did very well, actually. It was um, his mansion, but there were other families living there for years, and then this apartment, that everything changes. It was actually the bus drivers that slightly uh, made sure that I will understand that this is apartment that is something off with it. Um, yes, real estate. So when people understand that sexual sovereignty is really all that important, they also understand that um, nuclear bombs went down. There was a lady that helped Oppenheimer, and she helped Oppenheimer because he treated her respectfully. Now, the problem with the A bomb was the margins. If it's a global nuclear holocaust without margins, with density that is high enough, so people would really poof out, then this is on the table. There is no bunker that can sustain a happy, thriving human being for 70 years. In fact, after war, people usually get both agoraphobic and claustrophobic, which is why when you talk about the 15-minute city, it's obvious that these cities are going to be bombed, which indeed, Saturn, Uranus, skyscrapers, Saturn, cities, twin cities, bombed. Okay. For those who are invested in laser, then yes, laser focused. There she says it again. Pluto is retrograde on the 1 degree. Uranus retrograde and so on. Um, so yeah, I think we pretty much get the gist of how tending to our sexual sovereignty, also when we protect it in psychically. Okay, the fact that a person over such a thing could go yes and say, okay, kill all the people that do that, kill all the people that violate sexual sovereignty, kill all the people, not for them to suffer, just for this will not to be. And the fact there are Googleplex people doing that. Um, in fact, with Anneke Lucas, when she interviews survivors, one of the main things that comes up, the people that survived ritual abuse were the ones that turned the attack not to other innocent people as they were programmed, but to those that attacked them. This is why we would see cases like Shinzo Abe speaking against the WHO, right wing, very likely would be on Epstein list. He was not a ritual abuse survivor. That's simply the point. And got assassinated. Why? Because he turned the fire against those that attacked him. Now, when people get that, and when sexual sovereignty is a value, um, and defend themselves psychically, they begin to understand what were these things used to begin with. And when they do, those that try to attack them have ripple effects. If you want to know about these ripple effects, the best channel I recommend is Light on YouTube. She is someone who's absolute genius about channeling energy and human dynamics uh, of ritual abuse and psychic attacks, both psychological depth, psychic depth, really something that very, 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 very profound. Um, yes, there are other channels, but I every once in a while, because people are psychically attacked, people have to realign. It happened to me as well. Yeah, there were pictures on my Facebook that would be with one eye shut and things that I was not aware of. Even the couple of times where I did the peace symbol, the sneakers, the white sneakers with the Heineken. I think by the white sneakers, no, I did not know the white sneakers with Heineken. I did not know that. Um, the um, sneakers to sneakers, like those things that I had no idea. And the sneakers too was when I was in Nederland. I was in Schiphol, stealing the sneakers, and I was channeling. So for me, I had no idea what's going on, and I was shown two, because did a symbol two, and then I just took a photo of that because I was wondering what is that. Um, and so those things can happen to people, and when a person goes misaligned, then I would recommend them when they have the discernment. Um, and out of that, there are other people that have really good depth of insight to the intricacy of relations and the things involved. Um, um, so yeah, we all are yes, growing and learning. By the way, later I would tend to the prevention of assassination of manure sneakers. We wanted to Heineken sneakers. Now I'm gonna go out and see many Heineken bottles. um, but parents, when your children do those hand gestures, okay, whether it's the devil, okay, up or down, whether it's the peace, okay, even if the peace one, the zero one, the one that you see Beyonce doing all the time, not the rock one, but also the zero one, the rock one as well, um, and what else? Oh, the treason one, the two fingers crossed. Those are telltale signs that there are attempts to hack into their nervous system. Um, and that's important. The people that do these things are incredibly intelligent, and sometimes they don't even know what is going on or what they're doing, because they work by intuition. Um, and indeed, in Netherlands, I had to channel to sustain. Like there would be no feasible way to do in Netherlands without channeling. Okay, there's like no way that I found. Um, so yeah, um, more to say about these things. Yes, I think that's pretty much the topic. And when the commoners are not really aware of the need to have sexual sovereignty, or people pleasing in bed, okay, it doesn't have to be like rape or something like that. People pleasing in bed, um, not connected to their own energy, they are more susceptible to invasion. Okay, I know that part of the reasons that I was susceptible to so many things is because it took a time to reconnect with my body and and even understand what is my own sexuality. Um, I innately knew that it's important for me to do sexuality with self pleasure. Okay, so do not try to have like sex with other people. Um, yeah, of course, talking about when I was young. Um,